Humanianity, a new religious call. Humanity, religion for us all. Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can be.
Hi, I'm Bill Van Fleet, and this is Humanianity Conversation number 87, recorded on December 2nd, 2020. It is the 44th recorded conversation with my friend Mike. We continue to try to identify exactly where our worldviews are different and whether, by virtue of our discussion, there has been a significant change in worldview on the part of either of us. Unfortunately, we lost connection, and upon resuming, I failed to continue recording. We will try to capture some of what was lost when we start our next discussion.
Okay. Uh, I think we were talking about truth outside of X to kind of put it in a nutshell. That was the catchphrase I remember from last time. You want to start there?
Yeah, except there's something that sticks in my mind that you've said that I don't feel any certainty about. You have made two statements in the past that seem different. And I just would like to clarify that is cleared up now, if it is. You at one time said that indeed you believed that there were people on the other side of the earth that you had no experience with or anything that did indeed exist. And then at another time, earlier than that, you said that you believed that when you were not perceiving or thinking your wife, about your wife, that she did not exist. And so, am I correct that you have changed or with regard to something?
No, I think they're two different questions.
I was afraid of that. Well, actually, there's something that that goes wrong in our communication. Um, it's I think there's still something that is not resolved here. Um, um,
Okay.
can
So,
you explain why
yeah.
you believe that there that people do exist that you have no knowledge about and so forth and no experience of, and that that they are existing even though you don't know about them, but that your wife does not exist unless you are thinking about or perceiving her.
Well,
Can you explain that?
sure. Well, yes, because I am aware of them by virtue of me thinking about people on the other side of the planet that I'm not aware exist. So that question, to a certain degree, not even to a certain degree, I could just say this point blank. That question, let me put it to you this way: by asking me the question, I'm being made aware of people on the other side of the earth. So that question, do people exist on the other side of the earth you're not aware of? By virtue of me asking the questions, I'm being made aware of them.
So then, do I understand correctly? At that point, they came into existence, but they were not in existence prior to my asking you the question.
I'd say the most accurate answer to that question is I have no idea.
Yeah, so there's something there's something that goes wrong here. I had thought we were actually coming to agreement. I don't think that we have. I think that we are just maybe trying to say things in such a way that it gives that appearance that we're in agreement.
Well, I think that we are in agreement, and this is something I think that's confusing each of us. We're in agreement, but about, I don't know, our worldview, but we're drawing different conclusions from that. I think we both agree that there's quote unquote a curtain. We can't know what's behind the curtain. And there are certain implications that come from that. And you and I have we come to different conclusions about what the implications are. I think that's really what's happening.
Well, so then is there any chance of us coming to, I mean, I'm trying to understand your viewpoint and how you're using words and so forth. And I cannot still come up with.
I gave this some thought.
I'm sorry?
So maybe I gave this some thought. I had suspected that this would come up today. And I gave this some thought over this past week about kind of talking about the issues that we're having around, does my wife exist when I'm not thinking about her? And let's try to go down this rabbit hole in another way. So let me ask you a question. Can a person say that X exists when they're not aware of X? Is that possible, do you think, in your worldview?
The word, when you say aware of,
yeah,
what do you mean? Because that could be perceiving, or it could mean believing.
What I mean by that is thinking about them. An awareness could be coming from some kind of stimulation, sensory stimulation. It could come from an intentional thought. It could come from memory. But the key thing is, no matter how that person is led to the awareness, either by sensory, by memory, by willful thought, there's an awareness of X happening in their mind that allows them to say whether or not they believe that X exists. So my question to you is, do you believe that a person can say that something exists when they're not aware of that something at that moment in time?
Well, using your definition of aware, that would not be possible. But that's a different issue. There are all sorts of things that I am not thinking about right now that I could start to think about, or an even greater number, almost approaching infinity, of things that would never occur to me, that I would have no, quote, awareness of, but I believe that such things do exist.
I would say that when you just made that statement, there are an infinite number of things that I'm not aware of that could exist. You are aware of it. You are aware of an infinite number of things that could exist. You cannot communicate. You cannot even think about something. You cannot consider anything. You can't imagine it without being aware of it, whatever it is. Now, there are implications of that with regards to my wife existing when I'm not aware of her. And maybe it's, we've talked about this before about existence. And this is where I think you and I start to differ in what the implications are with our worldviews, which I think are similar.
Well, what I'm hearing from you is that to become aware of something brings it into existence. And I don't agree with that. There's lots of things that I am not aware of that exist, I believe. And then I can indeed, at some point, become aware of them. And that doesn't bring them into existence. It is just something that is happening within me relative to this thing that I would refer to as reality.
Okay, well, this goes into, I think, a little bit truth outside of X. And and this is something I think this is again, I think where you or I differ for implications. I don't understand how, given our world, the worldviews that we share, how making a statement of something's existence outside of someone's subjective experience simply has no meaning in our worldview. It's an imaginative, imaginary construct. It's just part of our imagination. This simply doesn't exist in our worldviews that we share. I don't understand how you can have a worldview that you have and come to that conclusion.
Well, I don't, that doesn't sound like my worldview.
You have a worldview. Let me say, my understanding of your worldview is that there's a curtain. And
well, wait. Now the problem, especially if anybody is listening to us,
maybe I shouldn't use that as a good idea.
Let me say that you're using something from the Mind-Body Problem book, and it has to do with just a metaphor that I use to explain that we have a subjective model and objective model, and we'd have to go into that, but it's beliefs obtained from our actual experience, and then beliefs obtained by virtue of what we have learned from other people, have been told, and so forth, that and so on, but that these are models of that which exists. They aren't that which exists, they're just models of it. And that and so the metaphor is the contest in which we humans are sitting in the audience, so to speak, and there's a curtain, and behind the curtain is reality, is that which actually does exist. And it's a contest not to come up with what is behind the curtain, but what it is like. So it's like this, for instance, an electron is like a billiard ball. Well, no, it's not. It's like whatever else it might be like. And we use that which is in our subjective experience, that as models to construct. We use them to construct models that are successful if they allow us to predict something about which we're modeling.
Yeah.
So if we say that reality, some aspect of something behind the curtain, is like such and such, and it allows us to predict what will happen if we do this, that, or the other, then the leader says, "Well, that's good. That's a good model." But it is not assumed to be the same thing as what is behind the curtain, which can never be known. All we can have are our models of it. And so, but that that metaphor does not at all imply
Yeah.
that there is nothing at all behind the curtain.
Okay. So
Okay.
I don't know if you recall, but I feel at least we've kind of debunked that idea. I feel that we have the last time and the last discussion before that, we have shown the limitations of using the line of thinking and the argument that you just presented to in any way substantiate that there is some kind of reality outside of our subjective experience. And the analogy would be that there's any reality behind the curtain. So what you're doing is you're making an assumption, a baseless assumption, in my opinion, without any foundation, to create this argument that points to something being behind the curtain. And my claim has been all along, you can't assume something and use that assumption to prove itself through an argument. So
Okay.
I don't think, so I think that even though I think what you just said, it does work if you make the assumption about reality existing, which is, that's okay if you want to do that. But if we start talking about, does that argument in any way provide, is that a good argument for the existence of something behind the curtain or reality, so to speak, outside of a subjective experience? I'd say no, it's not.
Okay, so yes, we have talked about this in the past, and what I have said is that this is not this metaphor and the beliefs that lead me to use the metaphor are not something that is demonstrated by following logically from something that we have already accepted, that we can fall back upon. So that is true. In the past, I have said that there is one bit of evidence of the existence of reality, that which is independent of our perceptions of it and beliefs about it and so on. And that is the ability to predict and to make mistakes. Okay, but as we arrived at, and as I realized later, that that was an assumption I was already making. So yes, it is a matter of assumption, and I don't believe we can do any better than that. Okay, so what we have then are my worldview and your worldview. And I believe that, well,
I just want to say I agree with that worldview.
no, you don't.
Everything you said up to the point of what the implication is, I agree with. That's why I think we share it. I differ in what the implications are there of it. I'm not so willing to grant automatically that there's just, it's a given that there's something outside our subjective experience. No, I wouldn't be willing to just grant that. Or I don't feel it should just be granted, and we should just end any kind of discussion about other ways of trying to show that or find out whether that really is true or not. Because that effectively ends the conversation. You kind of say, okay, let's just assume it. And then we have this closed argument and then the discussion's over. But there's this gaping problem, the assumption that's being made, that I think has to continue to be talked about.
Well, yes, I agree. Sometimes you say, yes, well, we agree, but we don't.
But we don't agree with we don't agree with everything.
So I think that we something goes wrong in our communication, so that even though there are times when we feel like, oh yes, we've made progress toward agreement, we actually haven't.
Why does agreement have to be 100% either we agree or disagree? There are huge overlapping agreement with our worldviews, and I would argue the foundational view is agreed upon. It's the conclusions that we're making on the basis of a worldview which we share is different.
The foundational views, you say, are the same, and yes. I say that they are different.
How so?
Well, can you tell me what the foundational view is that we both agree to?
There is a curtain, and behind that curtain...
No, please, wait, let's not use metaphor. That's a metaphor, and you can always take a metaphor and make it mean different things.
Yeah. That the only thing there is our subjective experience, and we can be sure. Well, let me say what I mean by sure. There is our subjective experience, and that subjective experience. But now I'm just going to say what I said in the beginning. There is a subjective. Within our subjective experience is fuck. I lost. Wait. Let me think about this again. The only thing we can know is what's in our subjective experience. That's something, and things that are outside our subjective experience is, with respect to exactly what that might be, is open to debate because we can never really directly experience that. That's this metaphor of this curtain. There's something behind the curtain we can never really kind of see and know. That is something we both agree upon.
Well,
now
wait. Let's.
So we're going backwards 3 weeks, Bill. But okay, go ahead.
Yes, I know, because I think that.
I think you just forget the conversations. But okay, go ahead.
There happens to be. Well, I think we do go over and over the same things, but there's a tricky kind of word problem here. Now, you've introduced another word, know, K-N-O-W. We've been through this before also.
I think what happens is, I really, really believe this. It doesn't bother me. It's okay. But I really feel like you forget some conversations we've had and what we've gone over before. Because we wound up talking about very similar things. And we, in fact, last time we had come to agreement that there was a lot of overlap in our beliefs. And we started to talk about the fact that, we needed to explore why it was that we both have a similar foundational belief system, but we're coming to completely different conclusions about certain things that just kind of didn't seem to kind of make any sense. And that was an area that we should be focusing in on. But I think what happens is, and I understand it's fine, some of the details of that stuff, it seems to be more difficult for you to remember, and we wind up talking about it again. It's been my experience. But that's okay. If you want to talk about it again, that's fine.
I know that's the way that you perceive it, understand it, yes. And it is indeed true that I can't remember the details of a year's worth of discussion and so forth, but that's not what I see is going wrong. There is a problem in that, well, from my standpoint, like from your standpoint, it's, well, my memory is bad. From my standpoint, you use words in a tricky way, such as to get past something, positions that you have that that I do not have, and that I think are very non-optimal to have. So
I'm confident we can go through the same discussions we had over the last couple of sessions, and I'm confident we'll just come to the same conclusions. That's okay. It's good practice for me to go over things many times, because my memory's not that good either.
Okay. But let's try.
That's fine.
There's a certain point I will ask you a question, and then the answer becomes increasingly complex and usually has words in it that are tricky, like the word know, K-N-O-W.
I'll try not to use those tricky words then.
Yeah, okay. The problem, the thing that you keep saying that I do not agree with is that it is not true that there are things existing, that there are things that exist that you have no awareness of and never think about or come to a conclusion about one way or the other. Now, what happens is, what I'm hearing you say is, well, no, that's not right, because if you ask me the question, then I'm already aware of it, so that brings it into existence. But the question is whether things exist that never do come to your mind. Do I exist even when you're not thinking about me? Or do I pop in and out of existence, depending on whether you are aware of me? And you're saying that, well, to ask you that question then makes you aware of me, and so that brings me into existence.
You are basing your entire argument on a third person point of view that is completely imaginary. Completely imaginary. It has never happened in the history of human existence, of consciousness, ever, and never will. So my first question to you, I guess, is I would like you to substantiate why you think basing your arguments on a completely imaginary point of view is valid.
Well, what you mean by completely imaginary is where the trick comes in here.
It's not a trick.
Is
I don't think.
Tricking you and me, or trying to. of course, you and I talking about a rock on the other side of the moon that will never be seen by any humans and so forth, then we are imagining that rock. We're imagining. Go ahead.
That's not what I am claiming is the imagination.
Okay. See, then.
So let's clarify.
Yes.
It's good.
Yes.
What is the imagination? Is that there is a point of view of experiencing the rock that is not a first-person point of view. You continually make arguments based on a certain point of view that is a third-person point of view. It is not a point of view that anyone ever at any time in the history of humanity or ever will in the history of humanity have. So my question to you is, if you're trying to be accurate with things and come to accurate conclusions, how could you base an argument on a point of view that never has happened in the history of humanity and never will happen in the history of humanity and never does presently?
Okay. Now see here, this thing has happened again that that I think happens over and over. This time, this new set of words, this new phrase came in, third person point of view, as if we are in agreement with how that is being used in this case and so forth. And it does not have meaning for me.
Well, what part of our conversation is for us to present varying ideas. And if some don't have meaning for the other, it's to explain and clarify and come to an agreement on the definition of it so we can talk about it. So what I just did, so when I bring up a term or you bring up a term, those terms could be where the lack of clarity is coming in and why we're in disagreement.
I agree
with some things.
Okay, so can you tell me what you mean by third person point of view?
A third person, well, let me try. First, I'm going to make some analogies, and I'll just try to actually explain it. So we've talked before here about this point in your book where there's a house, and then you've seen in these cartoons where there are these bubbles on top of the character that shows what's happening in their head. The first person point of view is what's inside of that bubble, inside of each one of those characters. It's what the person is experiencing from a first, it's what their subjective experience is telling them. It's their personal own first person point of view. A third person point of view is the picture outside of both those persons' bubbles that's showing what's inside of those two persons' bubbles. That's the third person point of view. There's an analogy towards writing. There's a first person narrative, a third person narrative that is also similar. But so when you make an argument, and I claim it's based on a third person point of view, what I mean by that is it explains a situation from a point of view that is not inside of anyone's first person subjective experience. That is a point of view that has never existed in the history of humanity and never will exist in the history of humanity. So if you want,
nobody has ever had that point of view.
Nobody. It is impossible for you to step outside of your subjective experience, other than through your imagination. But it's your imagination.
No, that's
my claim.
But that's a different claim. When you say it's impossible to step outside of your subjective experience, you're already doing it.
How?
Uh,
I'm stepping outside of my subjective experience?
because you are stating something, namely subjective experience, as an entity that you're looking at from outside. And you're
Well, outside of what? Explain outside.
that will mean different things depending upon the context. So if we try to go back, so for instance, you're saying that there can be no science of psychology where human psychology, like what goes on in that person's mind and what goes on in that person's mind and so forth, cannot be studied as something that well, exists or is true of reality, that it just cannot be talked about, and it's talked about all the time. You just a while ago you said that it was impossible to take a third person point of view.
Let me clarify. So what you are doing and what everybody does when they imagine a third person point of view. So let's continue this thing with the cartoon, is inside of the head. This person is looking at a house, and inside, they're getting the sensory stimulation, and in their subjective experience, they paint this picture of a house. Now, they could, inside of their head, paint a picture of somebody else with a bubble inside of them looking at the same house and imagine that that's a third person point of view, but it's still their first person point of view. You cannot step outside of your first person point of view. If you try to, it's your imagination which is doing it, which is inside of your first person point of view. It's inside your subjective experience. That's my claim.
Yeah, I know, and it's very difficult to say where the problem comes in there. I mean, it's like you're saying that it's impossible to be a psychologist.
You could be a psychologist, but I think the psychologist, and I've already talked to my supervisor about the insanity of psychology in actually making any kind of claim that they know how the mind works or kind of what's going on here in any kind of ontological kind of objective manner. It's insane. And for the reason I'm talking about just now, you can study it all you want, and you can make claims that you know the way things are outside of your subjective experience. There's nothing stopping anybody from doing that. I think what has to be examined and considered is a level of accuracy. Such a, I would argue, belief system that's based on imagination is warranted.
Okay, you have just brought in another very important term, having namely accuracy, which is something different, because a belief can be inaccurate, it can be highly accurate, or somewhere in between. But that, as soon as that's brought in, that confuses things further. So I am you're saying it is not possible to develop increasingly accurate beliefs about how the minds of humans work?
We talked about accuracy before in the last discussion we have.
Well,
Accuracy, you're making, here again, you're using your imagination to assume that there is some idealized standard that we can be accurate or inaccurate against. And during the last discussion, what we came to was that those standards are simply preferences that one believes in or not.
No.
Yes, we did. Watch the discussion again. Yes, we did. Go ahead.
Now there is further confusion. Accuracy
Okay.
has to do with the ability to predict and not make a mistake.
No, we went through this last session.
How is that wrong? What do you say accuracy is?
Okay, so then let's take that. We're going to stop talking about. So we'll stop talking about this and go back to talking about accuracy now. Okay, it's in a sense it's the same thing. Okay, when you're claiming accurate, it's the same. Accuracy has to do with the third person point of view that I'm arguing doesn't exist, and this is how I made the successful argument in last discussion that it's really a preference. And that's how we started to get into what is truth outside of X. But
now
anyway.
that completely, I could not follow.
Yeah, I know, because I don't think you remember the last discussion. But okay, so let's continue. Let's just go over it again. When you are, so I'm going to start a sequence of arguments that I think you and I will have that I would imagine is going to lead to the same conclusion. So when you are claiming accuracy, okay, you are believing really in a certain preference you have.
Claiming accuracy. I don't know what that means. Claiming accuracy.
When you make the statement, yeah, it's a claim. I claim that we can make a prediction and its accuracy or not reveals some kind of provides some kind of argument or evidence for something outside of your subjective experience. Okay, so that's a belief you have, and it's that belief is a preference.
We have slipped already.
Bill, I can't believe we got to go through this again. Okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Well,
it's okay. I don't mean to be impatient. I'm not impatient. It's fine.
What is the alternative that we say? Oh well.
No, there's no, and it is not.
Let's move on.
No. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay. But you have to also understand. I mean, 3 to 4 hours of we got to talk about it again. But that's okay. I understand. It's fine. I just needed to just vent a little bit there. So let's talk about it again. Yeah, venting is the wrong word, as if I'm annoyed, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, I understand. I have the same feeling of, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we really could say that we'd come to agreement and we moved on to the next thing? That would be so great. I agree with that. And I also have some of the same reactions to our discussing the same thing over and over again. But what I'm concerned about is that something goes wrong. And rather than my saying, okay, yeah, Mike, yeah, we agree. Now let's talk about such and such, when we don't really.
That's not
that
yeah, I mean, that's not what gets That's not what it is with me.
Okay.
And you have to, I guess, there's no excuse. I understand this is this the way it is, and for me to, it's just this. I don't even want to say what I was going to say, so it's not a big deal. Let's continue to talk about it. It's okay. We will. I believe what happened before. It may take another 2 or 3 discussions. It may take another 4 to 6 hours. But we'll come to the same conclusion again, and we may have to do it 1 more time or 2 more times, and then eventually it'll kind of stick, and we'll be able to move forward. Very similar to what happened when I had made the claim about you making an assumption about reality in your argument about models, and it took like several presentations of that for us to finally say, okay, right, I remember, and now let's move on. So I just think we have to do the same thing here. It may take a few discussions. So let's go on to what accuracy means.
That was a change in my understanding. So I changed from what I had originally said to something different. Have you made any change in your beliefs? And if so, can you?
I think that change has become so internalized. I had made a change with regards to kind of accepting that you and I had a similar worldview, and what I was, and rather than trying to, rather than having the belief that we really didn't. That happened 3 or 4 sessions ago, maybe more than 5 or 6.
Talking about a change in worldview, a change in what you were basically contending, because I changed mine.
Well, I think for a while there, I was maintaining I had a worldview on the basis of more of an argumentative kind of value system.
I didn't follow that.
And yeah, so yes, I think I changed my worldview. That worldview used to be one where I would say things like, if I remember correctly, nothing exists outside your subjective experience. I've modified that certainly when I had stopped, when I had come to the realization that, well, I think I'm really just more being argumentative during these discussions rather than anything else.
What did you replace that with?
That I'm not sure. That, realizing that if I'm to be most accurate with things, and the foundation of I think my worldview is one of limitations, and acknowledging my limitations and being willing to say, I just don't know.
Wait, I'm going back to what you said is a change. It sounds to me like the change.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like the change that you are saying took place in you is that you recognized that instead of making a statement with complete certainty, that it could be made with the awareness that you could not have complete certainty about it.
No, there was a change of the statement. Instead of saying, like, nothing exists outside of my subjective experience or something like that, I began to say, I don't really know. Well, I began to use words like, probably.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I just said. Maybe I didn't state it clearly.
Yeah. I'd say I changed my perspective on there, definitely.
Well, you changed it from being certain to being less than certain, but still thoroughly convinced, or not thoroughly,
Yeah, I would say thoroughly.
but convinced. In other words, that you were still believing that that was most likely rather than the alternative. So you
Something
didn't
else.
really change your worldview or anything. It was just that, well, you realized that it was okay to say, well, I can't be absolutely certain.
Wait a minute. No,
Did I mix that up?
no. A change is a change. I think you asked me, did I change my point of view? Did I change my worldview? And yes, I did. I explained to you how.
But
It went from stating probably nothing exists outside my subjective experience, I could be sure of, to I don't really know. To and then sometimes in certain situations, and also stating probably something does, but I don't know what it is. So how is that not a change? And even more so, Bill, like, what's the point of this? I mean, where is this? Where is the? I guess what's your point? To this.
See, it all got. I couldn't. You introduced another thing. Now it's gone because there's so much that took place after that. I was hoping to call that to your attention. It'll probably come back. But it's like you added 3 words in that that changed everything. I'm sorry, I can't.
That's okay.
What I'm talking about. You don't remember the last thing you said, do you?
I guess the last point I was making.
The change, you're talking about the change that you made.
I think apparently I hear what you're saying is changing from being certain about something to being unsure about something does not constitute a change. I think that's what you're arguing. That's your position.
It does. That's a change, but it's not a change in the worldview. It's just saying that, well, I'm a little less certain, but I have the same worldview.
If somebody's worldview is based upon nothing existing outside their subjective experience, and then says, you know, I'm unsure of that. I'm unsure whether I can't be sure whether or not something exists. That I would argue is a substantial change, because the basis of that person's worldview, the foundational concept, was that nothing existed outside their subjective experience. So I would say that constitutes a significant change.
Well, you're still saying that that's possible, that nothing exists outside of your person.
Yes, but before that, the person was saying.
Hear that? You said yes. You still agree with that?
Agree with what?
That nothing exists outside of your subjective experience. You still agree with that, but you are saying you can't be 100% certain. That's still your position, right?
But the position in the past was, no, nothing does exist outside my subjective experience.
And you believe that that's still possible, but you can't be as sure.
But in the past, it was, no, there is no other possibility. That's what it is. So that's a change.
The change.
You know, that doesn't qualify as a change for you. Okay.
It's not a change in your worldview. You still believe that there's.
I would claim it. I claim it is.
You still have as a worldview that nothing exists outside of your subjective experience. It's just that you say that you can't be absolutely certain of that.
No, I think that's a substantial change. I mean, whether or not, according to your standard, you believe it is, I mean, that's certainly your point of view.
It's a
But
change,
I mean,
but it's not a
I certainly would claim that's a significant change, in my opinion.
it's a significant change from absolute certainty to being pretty thoroughly convinced. That's a change. But with regard to what it is that there was absolute certainty about, and now that you feel thoroughly convinced about, but recognize that you can't be absolutely certain, that has not changed. That is not.
No, that's not, I guess then maybe I'm not communicating what I'm saying properly. I guess what I'm saying properly, what I mean by that is not, it could be like what I believe could be, or your point of view could be. It's that it is impossible for me to know, period. It's just impossible.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It is not so much that there's not so much the change was, well, nothing exists. Now I kind of doubt that. It could possibly still be, but maybe not. The change was, I can never know. So it can never know ever if there's anything outside my subjective experience. What it is, it's really, it seems to be part and parcel to imagination and belief. It's something that I believe in, you believe in, and there's kind of no way kind of out around that.
That's a matter of definition, actually. But the question, you still, as far as I can tell, believe that nothing exists other than that which is in your subjective experience.
There are two things that I don't understand why you can't let go, and that's one of them. I'm not sure what I'm doing to I don't know if your failure to let that go is something I'm doing, or it's just something about the way you just view things. But
you really didn't let me finish what I was saying. It's like it is hard to get you to no, that's I was going to say to make a definite statement, but or something like that. But it you have in the past said that when you're not thinking about or perceiving your wife, that she did not exist, that she existed only if you were thinking about her or seeing her. Now, my impression is that you still believe that. Is that correct or not?
Well,
is that correct?
Here's the issue, and then let me say, you are for you. No, Bill, I'm not going to answer that question because this is why we can run into these problems.
Right.
You force me to use your outlook on the world for me to answer the question. I answer the question because I'm forced to use that point of view. And then I don't really have that point of view. So the next statement I make is from my point of view. It's contradictory to what I say. Then you say, oh, wait a minute. You're changing your point of view. Well, if you don't want me to change my point of view, don't force me to use yours. I guess, I mean, maybe that's another way of looking at this.
Okay. Well, can you make a statement that is more correct than the statement that you made when I am not thinking about or perceiving my wife, she does not exist? Can you take that issue and maybe re-describe it in
I could re-describe it. Are you forcing me to do it in a statement, a sentence? Or do you want me to re-describe it?
well, sentences, yes.
Well, I mean, sentences or just one sentence? Do I have to just make a statement?
Well, I
Or
don't know. It depends on how many um,
so you like me to be succinct, but I can use more sentences. Okay. So, I mean, without me going through the whole argument, I'm going to try to be succinct, but I'm going to ask for some flexibility here. All right. Ask it one more time and I'll answer. So make sure I understand what you're asking.
okay. What would you now say that would be a more accurate description of your belief that you were talking about when you said, when I am not thinking about or perceiving my wife, she does not exist?
I think I can do it in a sentence or maybe two sentences.
Okay.
When somebody should not use the word exist without acknowledging and admitting to themselves that the existence of something depends upon their belief that it exists.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes,
Okay.
that's pretty good. That was one sentence, man. I'm proud of myself.
Say
I
it.
think I'd be able to do it.
Say it.
Joe, you want me to say it again? I don't know if I can because my memory is so bad when it comes to this kind of stuff. When somebody uses the word existence, they must also acknowledge to themselves and to the other person that the existence that they believe in, of whatever it is they believe in, depends upon necessarily their belief.
I'm sorry, it necessarily depends upon their.
So basically what I'm saying is what I'm saying, existence and existence, it is a necessary, belief is necessary for something to exist. For someone to say something exists. For someone to say that something exists. For someone to say,
Those are two different things. Now, right there, you said.
Right there, exactly. Here it is.
Well, you said belief is necessary for something to exist. And then you said belief is necessary in order to say that something exists. You
correct.
Changed.
Well, I was being more clear. I was clarifying what I meant by that.
Then you do not have the belief that in order to say that in order for something to exist, one has to say, believe it, or
and I said, I used the word should. I said, when somebody states that something exists, they should admit to themselves and make the statement that they believe in the existence. So I said should. That includes me, you, and everyone else. When I say something exists, I should say I believe that it exists.
Okay, that's an ethical statement, namely should. And I would say that that when people make statements, the context can serve the same function as preceding the sentence with the words, I believe that.
Right. So the reason I stated that ethical value, that ethical belief, that's what should happen, is based on certain existential beliefs that I have.
Yes, that you and I do not agree upon.
Well, no, I would say that we have in the area that I'm talking about similar ethical beliefs, similar existential beliefs, but the ethical beliefs that we are deriving from our existential beliefs are very different.
Well, I don't agree that our existential beliefs are the same.
When I said very similar.
I believe that there are lots of things that exist that I have no awareness of and never will. That is my belief. Your belief, apparently, is that those things do not exist, but that you are not absolutely certain.
There's a what's that word? There's some kind of cognitive fallacy, logical fallacy. I don't remember what it's called, but it's very relevant to this conversation. I'm gonna make a statement. You can't know what you don't know. You can't make any claim, any statement. You can't think about anything, can't use your imagination, nothing about what you don't know. So to make any kind of statement that things exist that I don't know about, but I believe they exist, is an oxymoron, because you do know about it. You're stating it. You're stating things I don't know about, things I'm not aware about. You are aware of them. These are the things you're not aware of.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. And we have another word that is very problematic. A-N-O-W, no. There are all sorts of assumptions made in that. The word is used all the time in popular discourse, but it has different meanings. Like, I just know it's going to rain tomorrow.
I clarified what no meant in the other discussion. I'd be happy to do it again. What do you unclear about in terms of the word no? What do you want me to get clarity on? What does it mean in that context, or
yes?
Want me to use a different word?
No, a different word, still not having any precise meaning, would not solve the problem.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what I said last discussion, but it'll come to me.
Well, let's go back to the original. I think it's going to be helpful if we can stay with the central thing that we're talking about, namely your statement that in order for something to exist,
I didn't say that. You said that. You said in order for something to exist.
I didn't finish my sentence in which
those first four words, that makes the whole foundation of what you were going to say. I didn't agree with, because you're taking a third person point of view by default in order for something to exist.
Here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Place, I'm trying to get us back to a statement where you take that position and I take the opposite position.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. But I'm not saying that.
You're not saying what?
I'm not saying for something to exist, you have to be thinking about it. It's not what I'm saying.
Okay. What are you saying instead?
At least the way you're using the word exists. When you claim something exists, it should always be accompanied with the statement, I believe that it exists. That in order for belief is necessary for existence.
Okay, well, I don't agree with that because what we are talking about, all of our sentences are our statements of our beliefs. So we're all of these are what we are. I'm putting my beliefs forward. You're putting your beliefs forward. We're finding that when we put them forward in the form of sentences, that the sentences contradict each other. So we're trying to clear that up.
Well, then let me get further. Let me refine that a little bit. No one should, including myself, claim that something exists outside of their belief in it. That's probably a better refinement.
Okay, now I would have an example contrary to that. I am relatively certain that there are species of animals that exist that I have no awareness about and no belief about the existence of them.
Mm-hmm. I completely disagree. In fact, what's really happening here is that all of this, anybody watch this video, this is all a big illusion happening inside of my head. I'm actually inside of a computer. And this is all fantasy. And it's like, it's like some alien civilization. That's really what's happening. You want to know why? You want to know how I know that? Because I had yesterday, a UFO came down and an alien got out, and they actually, they pressed a button and I became a woman. And they pressed another button and my dog Zeus turned into a cat. What other conclusion could I possibly make from that? So Bill, your belief system is complete. You're absolutely wrong about this. What I believe is that we're all inside of a computer system controlled by aliens. So let's talk about this and let's see who's more accurate here as a way to come to the conclusion whether there is whether the existence of something, whether the truth of something is independent of our belief in it.
Well, now,
and I really think let's do it.
Now we've introduced the word truth, which again makes things more complicated, because we were going to discuss that because we have different concepts of truth.
Are you claiming your position is not true? If you are, then we're done. Then it's a belief. It's your opinion.
My belief is not true about what?
Your worldview. You're saying it's not true, it's your belief? Or are you claiming it's true? It exists independently of your belief in it.
We have not defined the word truth. And so
truth, it exists independently of your belief in it. Whether or not you believe in it, that's the way it is. That's truth in the way I'm talking about it. If you agree, I think it's a reasonable definition.
Yes, that sounds right. I'm a little bit worried about where that will go, but that sounds right.
Okay. So
I would agree.
Okay. Okay, so now
Say
that's
it,
not true.
Say it again.
Say what again?
What it is
What do
that I agreed with. That you said.
believe you believe that your worldview is true. You believe that your worldview exists independently of your belief in it. It is accurate independently of your belief in it.
That my worldview.
Ooh, you broke up.
At this point, we lost connection and had to begin again. And unfortunately, I didn't turn on recording, so we lost this. However, he is looking over his notes, and we will review next time what we covered in this section to the best that we can.
Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can